you said that if a country has its military stationed in another country or has a military base in another country, that country is essentially under occupation. So if we think that way, India has a military base in Tajikistan, Mauritius, and some other countries. So are these countries under Indian occupation? And Bobby says, by your logic, Oman is occupied by India. There needs to be a distinction between why a base is placed and for what reason it's placed. Japan is allied with the US since the end of World War II. Just because Japan has an American base does not mean it's occupied. It is incorrect, misleading terminology used to describe the situation. Japan has its own autonomy and has the sovereignty of its own land. The policies of the government are controlled exclusively by Japan. They have tri-branch parliamentary system, as with most democracies, executive and so on. It also has an emperor as the head of state. As for serving its best interest, Japan has an alliance with the US. They also have what's that? Foregone specific elements of its military in exchange for American support. All right, very nice. So let's examine logically. So first of all, I've never said that if you have a military base in another country, it means you're occupying the country. I said permanent military bases signify occupation. Permanent military bases, not a transactional relationship. So let's examine the relationship between India and Oman and India and Tajikistan, for instance. So let's ask these questions. Firstly, has India defeated Tajikistan and Mauritius and Oman in a war? No, India has not. Has India forced Tajikistan or Mauritius or Oman to allow India to keep a military base there on their soil? No, India has not. Has India nuked Tajikistan or Mauritius or Oman? No, India has not. Has India forced Tajikistan or Mauritius or Oman to adopt a constitution that has been written by Indians? No, India has not. Does India have a permanent military base or bases in these countries for decades on end? No, India does not. What India does have is a very friendly, cordial, warm relationship based on mutual respect and mutual interests with these nations. So India has negotiated with these countries and they have accepted India's offer to emplace a military base on their territory. And I expect India must be paying them handsomely for that privilege of using their territory for India's purposes. And I'm sure there are other aspects to the relationship as well. India and Mauritius have very close relations because of ethnicity and history. So they trust India. They know India is not a hegemonic power, and India has supplied them with naval assets like ships and helicopters, etc. And we have a very close. I'm talking about Mauritius here. We have a very close strategic relationship with Mauritius. So it's a relationship based on mutual respect and mutual benefit. The same goes with Tajikistan. Tajikistan is a country in Central Asia. It is not a Turkic country. It's an Iranic country. They speak, I think, Persian or Dari or some variant or dialect of Persian, which tells you that India and Tajikistan have very ancient and very close relations, just the way we have with Iran. So once again, there is a relationship based on mutual trust, mutual respect, and mutual benefit. The same goes for Oman. So India, first of all, would be paying these nations for the privilege of hosting an Indian base on their territory. And secondly, there will be other considerations as well based on mutual benefit. That's how a healthy relationship goes. Now let's look at the United States and Japan. The United States has numerous military bases in Japan, most of which have been there since 1945. And the United States did not negotiate with Japan for keeping these bases on Japanese soil. The Americans have not taken Japanese permission for that. The Americans defeated Japan in World War II. They nuked Nagasaki and Hiroshima, right? They defeated the Japanese. They allowed the Japanese emperor to stay on as the titular head of state for their own, for whatever considerations they had, and they forced Japan to adopt a constitution that was written by the Americans themselves. they say it was written under US supervision. That's what they say. So it's not a native indigenous Japanese constitution. It's a constitution that was written under American supervision. It has certain clauses and things that prohibit Japan from doing certain things, right? And they have had these multiple, numerous military bases, air force bases, naval bases, marine bases, other bases on Japanese territory in multiple parts of Japan, across the length and breadth of Japan. They've had these bases since 1945, and they haven't taken Japan's permission for this. Understand this, please. Please understand. These are facts. You can verify them for yourself, for yourselves. Similarly, let's talk about Italy. The Italians were on the losing side in World War II. They were part of the Axis powers. The Axis powers were Japan, Germany, and Italy, right? So the Italians lost the war, right? They lost Second World War, and the Americans have had bases, military bases, in Italy since at least the 1950s. So this is again a permanent situation. So this is what we mean by military occupation. Military occupation means you don't take permission. You tell them this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to be. Deal with it. And then you have a permanent base there, and you don't pay them for the privilege of doing this. You don't take their permission. They just have to accept things the way they are. So that is the difference between the relationship that India has with Tajikistan and Mauritius and Oman and the Seychelles, etc. The relationships India has with these nations are relationships based on mutual trust, mutual respect, mutual benefit. The relationship that the US has with Japan, for instance, is a highly asymmetric relationship. It's a relationship that is based on coercion and based on a stark imbalance of power. So that is what we mean by occupation. I hope I have made this hopefully clear. Yes.